A rich family mocked a single mom. But they didn't know her truth. They laughed at her worn-out clothes and second-hand car, but if they knew who she really was, what she was sacrificing and why, those smirks would have vanished in an instant. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones we overlook. If you've ever felt judged or underestimated, this story might just give you the courage to keep going. Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that remind us never to judge a book by its cover. Emma Matthews clutched her grocery list tighter as she navigated the aisles of Westfield's most upscale supermarket. She didn't belong here, not with her faded jeans and the sweater that had seen better days, but the store was on her route home from her second job, and today they were having a rare sale on organic produce. Her son Tyler needed proper nutrition. The doctors had been clear about that after his last round of tests. "Excuse me," she murmured, trying to squeeze past a woman whose diamond earrings probably cost more than Emma's monthly rent. The woman pulled her designer handbag closer, as if Emma might snatch it, and whispered something to her husband. They both chuckled, eyes flicking dismissively over Emma's appearance. Emma pretended not to notice. She was used to it by now, the sideways glances, the barely concealed contempt. Westfield was a town of old money and new mansions, and she was the anomaly, the single mother who cleaned those mansions during the day and waited tables at night. What they didn't know was that 5 years ago, Emma had been one of them. At the checkout, she carefully counted out exact change, aware of the impatient sighs behind her. A family stood there, the Prestons, she recognized with a sinking feeling. Richard Preston headed the investment firm where Emma's ex-husband had worked. His wife, Victoria, had once hosted charity galas that Emma had attended in designer gowns, back when she was Emma Harrington, wife of financial prodigy James Harrington. "Some people really should shop at discount stores if they're going to hold up the line counting pennies," Victoria stage whispered to her teenage daughter, who giggled behind a perfectly manicured hand. Emma's cheeks burned, but she kept her head high as she gathered her meager groceries. These people had no idea that she had once sat at their dinner table, that she had once donated thousands to Victoria's pet charities with a casual stroke of a pen. They had no idea that when James's Ponzi scheme collapsed, he had fled the country with their savings, leaving Emma to face the music, and the federal investigators. They didn't know that she had sold everything to pay back the investors her husband had defrauded, even though legally she could have kept much more. They didn't know that she had walked away from that life with nothing but her integrity and her son. And they certainly didn't know that Tyler's medical bills were the reason she worked 2 jobs and pinched every penny. Outside in the parking lot, Emma loaded her groceries into her 15-year-old sedan, the one possession she'd kept from before, now rusted and unreliable. As she closed the trunk, she heard laughter and turned to see the Prestons pointing at her car while loading their shopping into a gleaming new Range Rover. "Mommy, why does that lady look so sad?" The voice came from a small boy holding Victoria Preston's hand, their youngest, Emma guessed, born after her own fall from grace. "Some people make poor life choices, sweetheart," Victoria replied loudly enough for Emma to hear. "That's why you need to study hard and marry well." Emma slipped into her car, hands trembling slightly as she started the engine. The familiar rattle was comforting somehow, at least her car, unlike her former friends, had stayed loyal. Tyler was waiting at Mrs. Abernathy's apartment when Emma picked him up after her shift. The elderly woman watched him after school for a fraction of what daycare would cost, her kindness one of the few blessings in Emma's new life. "Mom, I got an A on my science project." Tyler's face lit up as he bounded toward her, waving a paper with a red A circled at the top. "That's amazing, buddy." Emma swept him into a hug, breathing in the scent of his hair. At 8 years old, he was the spitting image of his father, but with her determination and resilience. "I knew all that hard work would pay off." "Mrs. Abernathy helped me practice my presentation," Tyler said, beaming at the older woman. "He's a natural scientist," Mrs. Abernathy said, patting Tyler's shoulder. "That project about renewable energy was college-level work." Emma thanked Mrs. Abernathy and led Tyler to the car. As they drove home to their small apartment on the edge of town, Tyler chattered about his day, his upcoming doctor's appointment, and his dreams of becoming an environmental engineer. "And then we can build a big house with solar panels and a windmill, and you won't have to work so hard anymore," he concluded. Emma smiled, her heart aching with love for this child who worried about her more than he should. "That sounds perfect, Ty. But you know what? I'd be happy anywhere as long as you're there." Later, after Tyler was asleep, Emma sat at their tiny kitchen table with a stack of bills. The medical insurance covered most of Tyler's treatments for his autoimmune condition, but the deductibles and specialized medications were still crippling. She had been putting aside money for months for an experimental treatment that showed promise, but they were still short. Her phone buzzed with a text from her boss at the cleaning service: "Preston House added to your schedule tomorrow. Big job, new client." Emma stared at the message, a cold feeling settling in her stomach. The universe had a cruel sense of humor sometimes. 5 years ago, she had hosted Victoria Preston at her home for fundraisers. Tomorrow, she would be cleaning Victoria's toilets. She thought about calling in sick, about refusing the job. But the truth was, she couldn't afford to turn down the extra hours. Tyler's treatment had to come first. Her pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. The Preston mansion was exactly what Emma had expected, ostentatious, with soaring ceilings and marble floors that her company had been hired to polish to a mirror shine for an upcoming charity gala. The irony wasn't lost on her. She kept her head down as she worked, hoping to avoid any direct interaction with Victoria. For the first few hours, she succeeded, methodically cleaning rooms larger than her entire apartment, trying not to remember when such luxury had been her daily reality. It was in the home office that her luck ran out. She was dusting the bookshelves when Victoria walked in, talking rapidly on her phone about the charity gala. "Yes, it's for children with chronic illnesses. Very photogenic, excellent for the firm's image," Victoria was saying. She stopped short when she saw Emma, a flicker of recognition crossing her face before being replaced by the practiced blank expression the wealthy reserve for service workers. Emma nodded politely and continued dusting, her heart hammering. "Please don't recognize me," she silently pleaded. But as Victoria ended her call, she lingered, watching Emma with narrowed eyes. "Have we met before? You look familiar." Emma kept her eyes on her work. "I don't believe so, ma'am." "No, I'm sure I've seen you somewhere." Victoria tapped a manicured finger against her chin. "The supermarket. You were counting change." "How quaint." Emma said nothing, focusing on a particularly stubborn bit of dust. "Well, when you're finished in here, the guest bathrooms need attention. We're having 50 people over tomorrow night for a fundraiser." Victoria's tone made it clear she was enjoying the reversal of their positions. "It's for children's medical research. Not that someone like you would understand the importance of philanthropy." The irony was so bitter Emma could taste it. 5 years ago, she had chaired the board of a foundation that funded medical research. She had organized galas that raised millions. And now, Victoria Preston thought she wouldn't understand philanthropy. "I'll make sure the bathrooms are spotless, Mrs. Preston," Emma said quietly. Victoria lingered, seemingly disappointed by Emma's lack of reaction. "You know, my husband says people end up exactly where they deserve to be in life. Some rise to the top, others, well." She gestured vaguely at Emma's uniform. "I suppose we all make our choices." As Victoria turned to leave, Emma noticed a framed photograph on the desk, Richard Preston shaking hands with a familiar figure. Her breath caught. It was James, her ex-husband, clearly taken recently. He looked tanned and prosperous, not like a man on the run from federal charges. "Your husband works with James Harrington?" The question slipped out before she could stop herself. Victoria turned back, surprised. "You know James? He's Richard's new partner in the Cayman Islands venture. Brilliant investor. Such a shame about his ex-wife, dreadful woman, apparently. Ran off and abandoned him after some financial troubles, took their son too. Men like that deserve better. Emma's hands tightened around her dusting cloth. The audacity of the lie, the complete inversion of the truth, left her speechless. James had rewritten history, and people like the Prestons were eager to believe a story that confirmed their worldview, that men like them were the victims, never the villains. Is something wrong? Victoria asked, noticing Emma's rigid posture. Emma forced herself to relax. No, ma'am. I'll finish up here and move on to the bathrooms. After Victoria left, Emma stood frozen, staring at the photograph. James was back in business, working with Richard Preston, probably running the same scams that had destroyed so many lives, her life. And he had painted her as the villain. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands and took a picture of the framed photo. Then, after a moment's hesitation, she snapped pictures of several documents lying open on Preston's desk: investment prospectuses, client lists, offshore account numbers. It wasn't why she had come here today. But perhaps it was why the universe had sent her. That night, after Tyler was asleep, Emma made a call to a number she hadn't dialed in years. Agent Morales? This is Emma Harrington. Yes, I still go by Matthews now. I have information about James Harrington and a new investment scheme he's running with Richard Preston. She sent the photos, explained what she had overheard, and answered the FBI agent's questions as best she could. When she finally hung up, she felt lighter than she had in years. James might have escaped justice once, but she wouldn't let him victimize more people, people who, unlike the Prestons, might not be able to afford the loss. The next morning, Emma woke to news alerts on her phone: FBI raids Preston Investment Group on fraud allegations. Accompanying photos showed Richard Preston being escorted from his office in handcuffs. By afternoon, the story had expanded: international investment fraud uncovered, fugitive James Harrington implicated. According to the articles, authorities in the Cayman Islands had detained James based on new evidence. Emma's phone rang. Agent Morales again. Mrs. Matthews, I wanted to thank you personally. We've been tracking Harrington for years, but he was careful. The evidence you provided was the missing piece. The agent paused. There's something else. The money trail led us to several offshore accounts, including one in your son's name with over $2 million. Harrington apparently set it aside as some sort of insurance policy. Since it can be proven to be proceeds from the original fraud, legally it should be returned to the victims. Emma's heart sank. She had expected nothing less, but hearing that James had hidden money while she struggled to pay for Tyler's treatments was another betrayal. However, Morales continued, the victims from the original case have all been made whole through your previous settlements and insurance. Legally speaking, this particular account falls into a gray area. If you were to make a claim as Tyler's guardian. Emma sat down, her legs suddenly weak. Are you saying? I'm saying you should hire a good lawyer, Mrs. Matthews. And quickly, before this gets wrapped up in years of litigation. 6 months later, Emma stood in the driveway of a modest but comfortable house in a new city. Moving trucks were unloading furniture, not extravagant pieces, but new, sturdy items that would last. Tyler was directing the movers on where to put his science equipment in what would become his study room. The settlement had been fair, not the full $2 million, but enough to buy this house outright, establish a medical trust for Tyler's treatments, and start a small foundation dedicated to helping families affected by financial fraud. Emma had even been able to quit her second job, though she kept working at the community center where she now provided financial literacy classes. As she watched Tyler excitedly explore their new home, her phone buzzed with a news alert: Victoria Preston sentenced to community service for role in investment fraud. According to the article, Victoria had avoided jail time by cooperating with authorities, but the Prestons had lost nearly everything, their assets frozen, their reputation in tatters. The final paragraph noted that Victoria would be fulfilling her community service hours at a local soup kitchen. Emma put her phone away, feeling no satisfaction in the Prestons' downfall. She had learned the hard way that fortune was fickle, that the mighty could fall overnight, and that what mattered wasn't what you owned but who you were when everything was stripped away. "Mom! Come see my room." Tyler called from upstairs, his voice strong and clear. His new treatment was working, the doctors were optimistic. As Emma climbed the stairs to her son's room, she thought about identity and worth, how the Prestons had defined themselves by their wealth and status, while she had discovered her true strength only after losing everything. In the end, the truth that the rich family hadn't known about the single mom they mocked wasn't just that she had once been wealthy like them. It wasn't even that she had chosen integrity when her husband chose crime. The truth they hadn't seen was simpler and more profound, that the measure of a person isn't in their possessions or position, but in their purpose. Emma's purpose had always been love, love for her son, love for justice, love for the truth. And that had made her richer than the Prestons could ever understand. Sometimes the people we look down on are carrying burdens, and strengths, we can't imagine. Emma's story reminds us that true wealth isn't in our bank accounts but in our character. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content that celebrates the unsung heroes among us. And remember, be kind, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about.